Thank you for joining us for the second installment of Abeka's Teacher Talk. My name is Barbie Tapua. I have spent 16 years in the elementary classroom, and I left the elementary classroom about 3 years ago to enter the college classroom, where I teach a little bit at Pensacola Christian College, and I also get to write and edit for Abeka in the elementary area. My husband and I have 5 children. They're all in school, K4 to 10th grade, so we are talking today about a topic that I know very well from the parent perspective and the teacher perspective, and that is dealing with the paperwork. Joining me in this important discussion is a friend and very organized teacher.
Barbie, thank you so much for inviting me today. My name is Haven Huang, and I have been teaching for 4 years at Pensacola Christian Academy in the 1st grade. And the weather here has drastically changed so much here in Pensacola, from hot to cold to wet, and now some cooler weather is going to start coming in. I know many days after school I'm going to want to come home, take a walk, but I know sometimes, at the very end of the day, right as I'm about to pack up, leave the room, turn the lights on, I always look at my desk if I can find my desk. Right. Buried in that paperwork, notes, nurses' notes, papers that I have to grade, and I always look at that and wonder, how is it possible? How am I going to get through all this paperwork to be able to go home? So hoping that today our little talk will be helpful to many of you as we talk about dealing with this paperwork.
I think we can really dissect that paperwork problem today. We have a lot to offer in our teacher talk, but we hope that you'll join in the conversation as well. So here's what would be great for you to do. In the comments of this Facebook Live, go ahead and add your ideas, share your comments, your questions, build off of one another. That would be great. Those questions that you ask, maybe we'll be able to hit some of those at the end of our presentation in a little bit of a Q&A. We'll try to help you if we can. So it's a great forum for supporting one another. I think this Facebook Live presentation will be. And speaking of support, we have an exciting element of support that is part of this teacher talk today, exclusively for teachers who sign up for this Facebook Live and who register on the website that you've seen on the screen. You do want to get registered so that you can be entered to win that $100 gift card to a restaurant or store of your choice. And we'll do that drawing right here live at the end of this presentation. You won't want to miss it. So let's talk about some paperwork problems, where paperwork as teachers can come from maybe 4 main sources: from the parents, from the students, from the administration. We can have digital paperwork as well. So one source of paperwork that really can get overwhelming easily is the parents. Parents send in a lot of notes. Haven, I know that you have a super smart way of keeping up with that paperwork and keeping it under control. So share your secrets.
One thing, like you said, there's a lot of paperwork that comes in from parents. Notes about, hey, my kid's changing transportation. Rather than being car, they're going to be bus, or vice versa. My student normally rides the bus, but today they're going to be car. I know at PCA, we ask parents to send in notes when their child's absent, letting us know why they were absent. And I think keeping up with that is so important. One thing that I keep to the side is an accordion file. And it's super easy, super simple, the kind you can probably buy anywhere: Walmart, Target, Amazon, and there are 2 ways to set up this accordion file. I have it set up month by month. So I have an accordion file with 12 tabs for the 12 months of the year. Well, actually really 10. But I know some teachers who have 2 accordion files. For example, like instead of having one with just 12 months, they have 2, so about 24. If your class is about 24, you might need a 3rd one if you have more. But for a class with 24, they actually number it 1 through however many students they have. And some teachers have it organized where every single student has a number. So when that student brings in a note, hey, what's your number? What's your number? And then they can put it in to keep track of all that. I have seen that way be so effective, but I think for me, just to save space, I've separated it by months, and it's really helped to keep paperwork organized. Within each file, though, rather than, just putting it in there, because that in itself can become so disorganized, and I kind of need to know what exactly is in there. I keep 4 separate, simple paper clips, and I know I thought in the past, why is it that I use paper clips and not binder clips? Because, after 12 months, those binder clips can really add up and get a little bit too wide and become harder for this to close. But I've kept it separate. So, for example, like at PCA, there's a couple of notes that go around. I have notes from parents, and I keep that in a separate clip. And then, that stays within that month. So later on, when parents are like, hey, did you get that note? And I'll look back, when did you send it? I can go back and find it. Another set of notes that we have that travels at PCA is like sometimes when the student goes the nurse. We send them to the nurse with a nurse's slip. And it's important, to keep that on record in case someone's like, hey, someone came to the nurse, do you know what happened to them? I'll be like, oh yeah, so-and-so, I have it written down here. We fell on the side, to let, the nurse know or parents know. And I've kept that. And one thing that I've done to go beyond extra, instead of just keeping it clipped, I have it clipped from oldest to recent on top. So it's even better by date to keep track of that. Two other sets that I keep are, when students come in tardy in the morning, to keep that organized as well. Later on, I'm thinking our attendance book. It's important, when in the morning I've already started Bible, all these kids are coming in with notes, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? I have it set to a separate side, like a little bin, and they put those notes in there. And then at the end of the day, I go through them, and then I can check, okay, we were tardy for this reason, and then I can record it in my attendance book. I also have another set, for example, when students leave early, because we need to put that in our book as well. What was it? Was it for a doctor's appointment, transportation, or other personal reasons? I've kept that together as well. Also, oldest one on top, and it's just a great, easy way to keep this organized.
I told you she was super organized. Isn't that so impressive? And I know that Haven did not sit down at the end of August and decide she's going to organize all of August. It takes a little bit of time every day, and the result is such an organized result. What a great resource that is. Any parent who has a question, a principal has a question, Haven will have the answer quickly for them because of that super organization. I can think of some special events during the school year that maybe need their own dedicated file for organization. If your school takes field trips, that's a lot to manage just in that one little one-day event. I used to use an accordion file similar to what Haven had, but more wallet sized, and you can keep everything you need for a field trip in something like that. So permission forms have their little spot, phone numbers written out or on a card have their little spot. If you have parents who act as chaperones with you, print out little cards with everybody's phone number on it, with everybody's permission, of course, and pass those around so everybody has everybody's phone number. Business cards or contact numbers for important things, the itinerary of the field trip, cash if I needed to be the one taking care of that. Even my phone would fit in one of those pockets of that letter-sized accordion file, so that my whole life for that day was in that letter-sized accordion file, and everything was where it needed to be. Another thing that I thought of is fundraisers. Fundraisers can be paperwork producers as well, and a lot of that is from parents. When I think about our PCA candy sale, our once a year big push fundraiser, there are notes, letters, various things from the office to the classroom, from parents to students to the classroom. Things are going back and forth all day long. That is a fast-paced 10-day fundraiser that we do at Pensacola Christian, and things are just flying. So and it's big bucks.
Yes.
And I don't want to be the one responsible for having lost somebody's paper trail, money paper trail, and end up paying out of my pocket for something. No, I'm going to keep it organized. So I have an accordion file exactly like that one that you have, Haven, but mine is set aside just for candy sale. I have 10 pockets, so one little pocket for each day of the candy sale, and everything from that day goes in its pocket, so that if there were to be a question and my account register just isn't balancing out, I can go back and find those mistakes. Now, my last candy sale as an elementary teacher was 4 long years ago. The time is going by really fast. A lot has changed in 4 years, not necessarily related to candy sale, but definitely in communication. 4 years ago, my last year at Pensacola Christian Academy, we didn't communicate very much as teachers to our parents by email or text message or parent portal, but that has changed. So while I have had to handle a lot of paper notes, Haven has much more experience in handling that more like digital paperwork. So Haven, how do you keep all of that digital communication organized?
I think just like the paperwork, keeping that organized is just as important. So what I did, and I really did this during COVID, because I feel like when that was a whole new, and I
we all learned a lot then, didn't we?
We did, and I remember thinking when I signed up to a teacher, this was not what I had thought of. But it was a new learning time, and I had to learn how to keep that organized, because that was the main way. Students were not coming into school with paperwork, so we were communicating a lot through email. One thing that I did in my email was I created a separate file on the side. You know how you can make new folders? And I made a folder by each student's name. So I had 30 folders on the side. And whenever a parent would send me an email, I would put it in that folder. When a parent would, later on, we'll talk more about some other paperwork, but whatever paperwork came from that student, I put it inside of that file, and that really helped keep all of that organized. So when I would call parents and text parents, touch base upon, they would call me and be like, hey, did you see that email? I could pull it up, be like, yes, I did. And then this is, we would talk about that. But definitely times have changed a lot more. There's a lot more email communication now than there was even when I first started a couple of years ago. We still did a lot of paperwork trail, but I think the email communication has really helped. And hopefully that idea of maybe making a file on the side by students could be helpful for maybe another teacher out there.
Yeah, sure. And that might take a few minutes in one sitting to set up those folders, but once they're there, how quick and easy to keep things organized. And the last thing that you want to do is open up your email inbox and just be confused and overwhelmed by the amount of work to do. But having those folders off to the side, you can set aside your finished business and not be hit in the face with it when you open up your email box. Hey, before we move on to something else, I want to make sure that those who have just joined us know about our giveaway. If you have registered for this Facebook Live on the website that you'll see, you are entered to win. Stick around all the way to the end of our live presentation here today, our live talk, and find out the announcement of the winner of that gift card. So tracking and storing parent paperwork and digital communication is a big job, but that's not the only source of our paperwork problem. Another source of paperwork problem is the boss. Sometimes we get paperwork, we get notes and memos from our administrators, principals, supervisors, directors, and even from our coworkers. So let's talk about some things that will be helpful maybe in tracking paperwork from our administration or from coworkers. So we've already talked about how things have changed so much in parent communication in the last few years, but something that Haven and I have very different experiences in is in the way that our principals communicate with us. When I was still in the elementary classroom, it was a lot of paper memos that would come to my little mailbox in the teacher mail room, and we did a lot of paper communication that way. Haven gets more digital or email memos from her principal, so I imagine that kind of reflects what our teacher friends are doing as well. Some may get a lot of digital memos. Some, like me, maybe still get a lot of paper memos. So Haven, let's start with you. You have such a great system for handling parent email communication. Tell us how you keep track of your administration's communication with you, especially with things that are time sensitive.
I think the communication that I receive from my administrator, it's kind of a little bit of both. More email than it is definitely paper. When it does come in paper form to my mailbox, I take a quick look at it, and I can tell right away, because on that memo, there's always that bold date of when I need this back by. So that kind of lets me know how urgent this memo is and how quickly it is that I need to turn it in. When I get that memo, I'll bring it back to my classroom, and I have 2 files on my desk, like a little manila folder. One says urgent and one says tomorrow. I'll take a look at that memo, and I'll be able to know, hey, I see a date on here. She needs it by this date at this time. If it's today, I'll put it in the urgent file so that after school, before I leave, I can look through it, or, if there's a certain timestamp, for sure, I'm going to, put it on the front so I can see it. But I keep it in that urgent file so that it's a visual reminder for me. Hey, before I go, check that file. Was there something in there that I needed to get done today before I left? Make sure I fill it out and give it back to her. Another set of memos that I sometimes get aren't necessarily due the day of. It might be due a couple days later. So I'll put it in the tomorrow file. And then tomorrow, let's say Monday, it's due Friday. Then I'll look at it Tuesday, okay? And I'll be like, oh, it's not Friday yet. So there's some things in that tomorrow file that stay there, just not tomorrow for several tomorrows. But eventually the day will come, Thursday, okay, tomorrow's the day. I need to make sure I have this ready for her and give it to her. But a big portion of the memos that I feel like I receive are via email. And one thing that I've done is I've kept a separate folder on my email as well. And I labeled it principal, and any notes and emails that she sends me, I put it in that folder. Sometimes I can't see them right away. But if I click, drag, and put it in that folder, it doesn't mark as if I've read it. So by the end of the day, I come back home and I look at that file and I see 7. I'll know, okay, there's 7 emails, memos that I need to look at. But those memos vary as to the need, the date, what exactly the day and time that she needs something by. So I use a lot of my plan book. We use our plan book to write out curriculum for the upcoming week. Playground, like when are we going to the playground? Because there's so many of us that rotate on the playground. Birthdays, but another thing I write there, always in red, is whatever, my principal needs. Hey, I got this email. This email says we need to do such and such by this, and I'll write it in my plan book. So it's also a visual reminder. I can always go back and check my email and read that memo again, but I think it's just as important to have it written down somewhere as well.
That's really great way to keep track of all of those things. So like I said, when I was in the elementary classroom, most of the communication I got from principals was in the form of written memos. And the most organized teachers I knew had this really great strategy for handling memos. They would walk in, to that teacher mailroom, pick up their mail out of their mailbox and flip through it right there, not even leave the room. And anything that they could know the answer to at that moment, they would just go ahead and write the answer on that memo and stick it back in the principal's mailbox, and it never even had to leave the room. It was done. And then anything that needed maybe a longer answer or an answer that they didn't know off the top of their head, that goes back to the classroom. And then what I did, and what some other teachers have found that works for them, is to take a binder clip and clip those memos to something that you're going to look at every day, your grade book or your plan book. I like to open up my plan book to this week, and any of those notes, I just have it in the clip. So when my book is open, I see the memos right there. And just like Haven organized those memos that go in that folder, she organized them by date. I organized my memos from administration by due date, so that the one that was due next is on top, so it's more fresh in my mind. And that helped me a lot. That by putting it somewhere where I was going to look at it even frequently throughout the day, it helped me to, 1, not lose the memo, and 2, to keep that deadline in my mind.
Definitely. And I think, you taught in elementary for several years, and it sounds like the way that you and I did or do things are a little bit different, yet hopefully all the ideas that we're sharing will be a help to you today. But go ahead.
It's just about finding what works for you and putting that new system to work and making it happen.
For sure. Well, I know we've talked about paperwork from parents, paperwork from administration, but there's another aspect. I think it's going to be the paperwork from students or for our students.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Barbie, I know I'm going to share with you a little bit of how I do it in first grade, and I think first grade and maybe the elementary level that you worked in, the paperwork necessary for the students is a little bit different. But in first grade, there's a couple of things I think that the students, there's a lot of paperwork. It's not necessarily quizzes or projects or book reports, but it's the daily paperwork that we have to keep up with. And I think there have been some days where keeping up with that can be a bit daunting. And I think definitely, if not organized, a day can go by where you're like, I forgot this paper. What happened? So I want to share a couple of things that I found. And just to put it out there, I think a lot of the things that I'm going to be sharing regarding this keeping the first grade students' papers organized was a lot through trial and error. You kind of have to figure out what works best for you. And it takes time, try it one way and you're like, that didn't work. You could try it a way and think that it worked and then try something else another year and say, well, this one works better. There was nothing wrong with the way that you did it maybe the previous year. But as years go by, I think through trial and error and just finding out what works for you, is best. But hopefully a couple ideas, maybe if they're new or different, would be helpful to another teacher out there. But there's a couple of things in first grade, and I know every school does it differently. Do the students keep their their books in their desk, or I know some schools already have them pre-collated at the beginning of the year. But at PCA, all our students keep their books in their desk. I'm thinking like the arithmetic book, letters and sounds, language. Those are the main core 3 books that we keep. Arithmetic is kind of easy because they tear it out every single day. The front they do in the morning and the back they do it in the afternoon. That one's super easy. But like the letters and sounds and language, only one side is done on one day. So one side is for one day, the back is for the next. And I know when you're dealing with 24 students, it's so hard to micromanage all 24. Like, does everyone have the right paper? Because you don't want to come the next day and, half of them say, I don't have this paper. So one thing that I've done to keep in the classroom that I think has really helped is everyone has a simple folder, nothing real fancy about it, the kind you can buy at the beginning of the year, maybe at the beginning of your school sale. What I've done with this folder is I have a sticker side and I have a non-sticker side. The sticker side, because sticker starts with an S, and S is for school, and stickers are fun, so school is fun. Okay. The sticker side are for papers that need to stay at school. So like when they come in the morning, they know, okay, the papers that we're working on are on the sticker side. By the end of the day, how do we know which papers need to go home and which papers need to stay at school? So what I do is I tell my students at the end of the day, hey, this paper, and unfortunately we're not quite at first grade level yet to be able to read at the very bottom arithmetic, but I'll describe it. Hey, that paper with a tractor on top, put that on the no sticker side. So then that they know that needs to go home. But like, for example, a different paper, like for example, this one says Oi and Coin and Oi and Boy, I'll tell the students flip that side over and put it on the sticker side to help them keep organized, because come the next day you want to make sure that everyone has the papers that they need to be able to get through the day.
So you talk them through all as a group.
I do.
At one paper at a time. Put this paper here, put this paper here.
Yes, and I know at the beginning of the year we always talk about training, and it's so important when you train them well at the beginning of the year. As the year progresses, it gets easier and easier. So at the beginning of the year, take the time to train your students about sticker side, no sticker side. So as the weeks and months go by, it'll get easier to be able to just tell them what books to tear out of, which papers to keep, and it becomes second nature. Soon they catch on too, like, oh, I already know she's going to say keep this paper on this side because we haven't done the back. So I think keeping the students' daily paperwork, that has really helped, having a folder with a sticker side and a no sticker side. Another thing that I've done is there's paperwork that I have to keep organized. I'm thinking, for example, like a writing paper every other day. I'm thinking of a test paper is on this day, a Bible Friends paper. What I've done is I went, at the beginning of the year when they had those teacher sales, I just went and bought a simple packet of 5 folders. And in the Target dollar section, yay for the dollar section, they had these. It's kind of funny. They're actually food labels. Those people who like food prep for the week. I bought these dollar food prep labels because they were so nice. Fun. They had the days of the week on them, but I put them each Monday through Friday. And on Friday, at the end of the day on Friday, I'll take out the papers for the following week that I know, hey, we need this. We need a speed drill, put it on Monday because that's the first day that we'll need it. Writing paper, our test papers. So that has really helped me to keep the papers that I'm responsible for the students, keeping that organized. Another one I'm thinking of is their homework folder. So now I know not all teachers have this folder, but I remember my first year teaching when I didn't have this in place and I sent papers home. Parents would open their backpack and then call me, of these papers, what's important? Is there one that needs to come back to you? And I remember thinking, oh, this is a lot of work, getting all these phone calls to explain it's this paper, it's this paper. So what I did was just like that first red folder I showed you. I bought one for each student. I have a sticker side and a no sticker side. Sticker, S is for stickers, school starts with S, and school is fun. So I would tell the students at the end of the day, put this paper on the sticker side of your backpack folder. I call it a backpack folder. And I made it very clear, this never comes out of your backpack. Just keep it in there. And parents know, like the students know, oh, this is on the sticker side. So when I take this home, let me show it to mom. Mom needs to see it, and we need to send it back to Miss Wong the next day.
Because it's on the school side, so it needs to go back to school.
Yes.
Got it.
But then the papers like on the no sticker side, mom and dad can keep at home. And that really helped. I think that just kind of falls under keeping paperwork for parents organized and the students too, because the students don't know, what needs to come home. After a while, they'll catch on like, oh, always this paper needs to come back to school. But that was another thing that I did for keeping the students' papers organized, and I found it super helpful.
keeping up with student paperwork in first grade is much different from how we keep up with things in upper elementary. All of my teaching experience is in upper fourth, fifth, and sixth grades, and we do things very differently there. Hey, before I talk about how we manage that student paperwork in upper elementary, have you heard some things along the way that you have a question about? Are you sharing ideas there on the comments? Don't forget to do that. Let us know if there's something regarding paperwork from parents, students, other teachers, administration, electronic or physical paper. Let us know what's troubling you, what challenges you're having, so that we can help you with those things. So in upper elementary, we don't have seat work, for one thing, and we don't have as many daily papers that come out and then go home and all of that kind of thing. So what we do have, and it really can get to be quite the mountain to deal with, is homework. There is a lot of written homework in upper elementary, and you have to have a system for managing that. Now, the system can change and evolve over time. Like we've already mentioned, COVID changed us, didn't it? As teachers, it made us different in a lot of ways. And some teachers have learned to handle homework differently thanks to COVID. And maybe teachers are accepting electronic homework now, where in the past that just wasn't a thing that we did. But maybe you, like me, got a lot of the homework in writing. What do you do with it? Do you grade it? Well, to be honest, homework is meant to be checked, but it's not meant to be graded. So grading it, well, thank goodness you can not have to grade every one of those papers that come in the door. So then what? What you want to do, at least this is what I did, is to have a box or something in your closet and hidden away where you can put the students' homework at the end of the day. You never want them to see you throw it in the trash can or throw it in the recycling bin. If the student gets the impression that you think of their homework as trash, then they'll no longer put the work into it, and it will not be a help to them like it's supposed to be. But so store it, keep it, and then at the end of the week, that's when everybody's gone, things are quiet around the building, that's when you take that box and dump the contents into that recycling bin. It has served its purpose at this time. It is okay to let it go. Also, you may have found that there are certain subjects of homework that you want or need to collect. And maybe there are some subjects that you just don't need to hang on to. You might find that students benefit from hanging on to their history and science homework and their health homework in upper elementary because those questions that they're answering come from the chapter checkups, which help prepare them for tests. So they've got a little study guide in their hands if they have their history and their science homework in their hands. Maybe you don't want to take that away from them. But their spelling homework, they may not need to hang on to that spelling homework from one day to the next. The only thing I can think of, Haven, that where a student has needed to or wanted even, they usually are happy to get rid of that homework, but maybe sometime they come to school when they've got their homework in their binder, but they forgot their spelling book at home. And so they might be able to use that homework then to participate in spelling practice during class, and then you take that homework away again at the end of the spelling class. And again, it's served its purpose. So you think about what homework that you really need to hang on to. Maybe some that would be better sending on to the students. Don't hang on to it for long. It will get overwhelming, but don't let the students see you get rid of it, or the value just tanks, and you don't want that to happen. Well, what about quizzes and tests? In upper elementary, you have a quiz or a test in just about every subject every week. And sometimes you have a quiz and a test in a subject in the week. That's another big mound of paperwork to manage. Here's what I did, and maybe you've done it this way too, or maybe you've found a different system that works. I took the quizzes and I just made a separate stack in my closet and just put the quizzes there. If there was ever a question about a quiz grade, I could go dig back down through that pile of quizzes on the shelf in my closet. Usually that didn't happen. The tests, on the other hand, I had, one of those plastic crates, and you can put hanging folders on them. I had a crate like that with a folder for every student. And after we would look at a test, and they would get their test back after it's graded, they'd look it over, and then they'd go put it in the file folder that had their name or their alphabetical number. You number your students alphabetically. They would go put it in there. So one student's tests were all from all subjects were all in that one folder. Well, when it came to PTM time and the parents were coming to the classroom, they need a chance to look at those test papers. So out comes their test papers, all out. Everything in that folder belongs to that child. So I can put that in a nice and attractive looking folder and stick it on the desk for the parents to see and look through. And then those tests typically stayed with us at the academy and they did not go home after PTM. So, well, now those files in that crate, now those are empty because we emptied them out for PTM. Well, we can start putting the next quarter's tests in there. So from quarter to quarter, we would have those folders with the tests in it for the students, for the parents to see. Occasionally, a parent would ask to see a test or a quiz in the middle of things. Maybe they'd see that grade on a report slip or on the parent portal and wonder what happened on this quiz or on this test. And it wasn't terribly hard to find that quiz and get that into the parents' hands. Even when in upper elementary at PCA, I dealt with 2 classes of anywhere from 26 to 32 or even 34 students. So if I've got 34 times 2 language tests, that's a lot to hang on to. 34 times 2 language quizzes, 1 a week for the entire quarter. That stacks up. It does take a little bit of work to have to dig back through that pile if I need to, but it can be done, and I can know for certain that I haven't lost those important papers, and you don't want that to happen either. Now, I was talking with some high school teachers about how they handle paperwork. We've talked from the elementary level. What about high school? So I really gleaned some interesting information that I wouldn't have thought of on my own from some high school teachers. One teacher told me that she doesn't hang on to any homework at all, except for things that would be like graded projects, like research paper or something like that. All the work gets checked, all that homework gets checked, but it stays in the student's possession. Maybe that works very well in the high school then, because, in elementary, the students have their binder, they have their backpack, right? And everything stays in the same room all day long. And maybe that doesn't happen as easily in the high school side. So letting the students hang on to their homework works best for that particular teacher. Something that really, this is the thing, I never would have thought of this. She told me that when it's time to give a quiz, every time that she knows a quiz is coming, she writes another quiz that matches the content of that quiz that she's giving, but is a little bit different. And she does that especially for her students that would be absent. So when a student is absent on quiz day, she's got a little sticky note. She writes the name on the sticky note. She knows who needs to take the makeup quiz, and she's got the makeup quiz there with her. And you might be thinking, like I was when she first started telling me this, that's more paperwork. Why would you do that to yourself? She had a really good reason. It made a lot of sense. She told me that the higher in grades you go, the harder it is to maintain test and quiz security and validity. And you don't want to give those absent students an unfair advantage by having them talk and chat about the test or the quiz with their classmates. So having that extra makeup quiz helped her to make sure that a student wasn't getting an unfair advantage. And to be honest, it's good for the student too in such a big way. The student knows that it doesn't benefit them to talk to their classmates about the content of that quiz, so they don't even attempt to chat about it. And really that would be cheating to get that unfair advantage by getting information. So not only is she protecting that quiz and that student at that time, but she's helping to build in them a habit that it will lead to academic ethics. And I think, yes, it is a little bit of extra paperwork and we're trying to manage it, but it's worth it in that case. So far we've discussed managing paperwork from parents, from administration, from students, from coworkers. I'd like to circle back to something that we've talked about already a little bit, and that is electronic communication. We really all did learn new things when we entered into that era of remote learning in the spring of this year. Now, to be honest, virtual learning, remote learning was easy for me to manage on the college classroom side where I teach now. A lot of my assignments are turned in electronically anyway. So Haven Christian School, the setting is probably a lot different than it is in the college setting. So describe how you've handled students' graded work during remote learning times.
Well, like you said, Barbie, virtual learning back in March was a huge adjustment. And like I mentioned, when I started teaching, never would I have thought, okay, I'm going to be some virtual online teacher. That's the joy of being a teacher, is being in class, being with the students. And that all stopped, back in March. But, with new times comes a new opportunity to learn different things. And I think now looking back, and I know there are several teachers out there who are still doing it now, but now looking back, I think what a special opportunity it was for me to get to learn something that I never would have. And I think that is, how do I deal with the paperwork that comes electronically? Because there is some on the first grade level that needs to come, and I think that was all of the tests. So it was a lot of work in the beginning, just helping parents understand what tests needed to come in. Every single week there were 3 tests that needed to come in. A writing one on Tuesday, an arithmetic test on Wednesday, and a phonics test on Thursday. And, so that we could still give their child a grade at the end of the term, it was important that we got those tests. And one thing that I did was I had a USB, and when you plug it in the computer, it said COVID school. And I remember I knew, okay, I'm gonna get my COVID school USB out. This is what I need. And what I asked the parents to do was, I told them, if you take a picture with your phone, or even if you scan it, and I try to kind of explain, I would ask them, hey, if you're an Apple user, go to Notes. There's actually a PDF scanner option. If you're an Android user,
I learned that too as a parent.
Yes, it was great. If you were an Android user, I found a different app that worked for them to be able to scan it. But I asked them to take a picture or scan that test and email it to me. When they emailed it to me, I asked them to put their child's name and the subject of the test. When I received it, then I would take it into my USB file. In that COVID USB, I had a file for every student. Underneath each file, I had 3 files: a writing test, phonics test, and arithmetic test. So when I received it from a parent, I would drag it into that file. If it was so-and-so a writing test, I would put it in the writing test, send an email back saying, hey, I got it, thank you. I think that way too, it lets the parents know, did you get my child's test? That really helped, because at the very end, I know parents were working, and it was not just one child at home. They were doing this for multiple children. And sometimes a week would go by and be like, we totally forgot, or we took it and we forgot to send it to you. So going back and knowing, hey, for this term phonics test, I needed, 25 to 31. Hey, we're missing 28. Give a picture of it. Can you send it to me? That really helped, at the very end, being able to, just click on the student, 3 test files. You've got everything. We're good to go. And that really helped me keep track of all the test paperwork that I needed during that virtual learning time. Another paperwork that I kind of kept track of during the virtual learning time was keeping in touch with the parents. And I think for me, it was kind of hard sometimes, when we did virtual learning, making sure that I made a connection with each student every single week, to let them know, hey, Miss Wong is still here. She still cares. She knows that I'm here, and she wants to be a part of this new school at home. One thing I did was I made an Excel document, and I just copied and pasted every week, because it was the same content, the same students' names, days of the week. And then I just titled each Excel week of such and such, week of such and such, and the date. And seeing that just helped me keep track of when I've been able to make contact with a parent, beyond just sending an email back saying that I got your test, thank you. But, making contact with a student, how's it going, doing, a couple minutes of tutoring over the phone. But I found that having that Excel document was super helpful in keeping track of, having that communication and touching base with students during virtual learning as well.
We all want to think of ourselves, don't we? We think of, as the teacher, you think of yourselves as being part of a team with your students and their parents, and it's you all working together. And you don't ever want to think about a parent that can make things conflictual or make things tense, but it does sometimes happen. And having that communication back up there, that record of your communication, if somebody, sometimes, it could be for a number of reasons, but sometimes maybe the child lives with mom and dad equally, and dad doesn't get a phone call and thinks this teacher isn't communicating with us, what's going on? But you have this record that no, you've been in contact with mom. There is communication going. It kind of helps to cover your own self too, to have that good that organized way of communicating. So with your files that you have, again, on that USB, a little bit of time invested, but the rewards of that, the super organized way that things can come out, such a help. Future topics for other teacher talk events like this will come from perhaps from what you talk about on that Facebook page. So keep the conversation going. Look for more in the future. Have a great rest of your day.